Alaskan Redditors, what are some inconveniences you experience living up there that most people don't think about? Frozen locks. Buy a lock de-icer so you can get in your mailbox or car. Ravens. Ravens everywhere. Ravens in your yard stealing dog food. Ravens in your dumpster. Loud obnoxious flocks of 50 frickin' ravens that never shut up from 4 AM until 1 AM. Moose. Moose that come into your yard every time the snow is deep and eat every rosebush you spent years tending. You can yell, clap your hands, jump up and down cussing a blue streak and the dumb fricks just look at you like, what? You serious? Come with me bro. The produce is expensive and often not that great. Think Budget Mart produce at Whole Food prices. Woot and Sumo bean bags used to straight up not ship to Alaska or Hawaii, but will now for an additional charge. IKEA still won't, like your address is invalid, and they won't even quote a shipping cost. It is an option to not ship to Alaska on Amazon, so many vendors don't. Sometimes even something like a handful of bolts that could be put in an envelope and shipped via USPS for $1, they still won't ship it. Also, sometimes wildlife gets in the way. A moose is blocking my car is a valid reason to be late to anything. The lack of decent produce was the only downside of living there for me. We ate a lot of squash, onions and potatoes. Seemed to be all that we could get that looked like it wasn't almost ready for the compost. Poopsicles, or poonicorns, depending on who you talk to. For those of us living in dry cabins, no running water flush toilets, hence, just outhouses. The cold winter months tend to freeze your outhouse droppings into an increasingly tall stalagmite of crap. Every so often, you need to grab a stick and knock it down a few feet so you don't accidentally impale your butt. On the bright side, being able to see aurora from your outhouse at 2 AM while you take a dump pretty much makes up for the poopsicles. I call it Mount Chocula. The internet is crazy expensive, and it's also data capped. Something I honestly never heard of before I arrived here in Anchorage. If you are an avid Netflix or Hulu watcher gamer, you're going to be looking at paying a good amount. For perspective, I paid $50 a month for an uncapped 50 millibars a second plan back in Texas. Up here, the same speed is $85 a month, but it's capped after 150 GB, so you can easily burn through it streaming. Good thing there is lots of stuff to do outdoors. This is what I came here to say. Our internet is so terrible and so expensive. Runoff, or when the snow melts in the spring, can be brutal. Inches of snurt, snow dirt, and snud, snow mud. You end up buying 100 gallons of windshield wiper fluid. Stupid smart weather. Ice fog, which is fog so dense you can literally cut it with a knife. You can't see 5 feet in front of you. Try driving in it, and it really feels like walking through ice. I try to explain it to people but I can never quite get across what a weird thing it is. It can feel like you're trapped because it costs a small fortune to go almost anywhere. My family is in Florida, which I realize is about as far from Alaska as you can get in the US, and it cost my husband and I $2,000 to fly home one Christmas. It cost my aunt and uncle less to visit my cousin in Germany. I was thinking about young people who grew up in Alaska their whole life. It must be somewhat daunting to feel like you're trapped somewhere as a teenager in the sense of, I'll never make it out of here simply because you're so isolated, geographically, from the rest of the world. Nothing from Amazon will arrive when you want it to. If you move up here, just accept that. Moose, no matter where they are, always have the right of way and they happen to be chronic jaywalkers. We have 2 seasons. Winter and construction. Both can severely hamper traffic movement. You will at some point be asked by a relative or acquaintance from the lower 48 if you can see Russia from your front door. The best answer to this question is no. Putin's Memorial Center obstructs our view of the Russian mainland. Loved it when I lived between Anchorage and Fairbanks, knowing the dang delivery trucks would drive right past my area and go to Anchorage, and then head back. Hey, yay. Now it's a week later than I was expecting it. If you go grocery shopping in the winter, you have to remember to put your fresh produce in the cab of your truck. If not, it will freeze on the drive home and then turn to mush when it thaws. I like this one. It's something very simple that you just know transplanters have done at least once. Makes sense, but easy to forget. 9 months out of the year, If you go outside it will be dark and you might not see the patch of ice that causes you to slip and fall and hit your head and die. That, and the abundance of terrible folk bluegrass music. During the winter it's frequently cold enough that cars won't start if they sit for more than a few hours without running. The fix is to have a number of electric heaters installed on various parts of the engine and transmission. An oil pan heater, a battery heater, a transmission oil pan heater, an engine block heater, etc. These are all connected to a plug at the front of the vehicle. Most businesses will have outlets at each employee parking spot so that the folks who work there can start their cars at the end of the day. Basically lifelong Alaskan here. Other than a few years in New York during my mid-teens, I've lived up here my whole life. Yes, it's cold. One of the inconveniences of this is having to install multiple heaters in a car so that crap like oil doesn't freeze. You also have to plug in your car every day, unless you want it to basically die. It's also very dark. Most days from early November to late January, I will barely see the sun, leaving at about 8:30 for work and coming home at around 4. It will be dark. The worst part is when it gets warm. Actually, roads become a thick, slushy mess, and depending on the weather, there will also be multiple freeze-thaw cycles that happen overnight, which compound to make driving a tiny slice of heck. Things are much more expensive here. Most fresh produce and dairy products are close to twice as expensive. I can drive for 6 hours in 3 cardinal directions and be in the same state. Shipping for basically anything from sites like Amazon is heck. This is doubled for eBay. The worst part, however, is the isolation. There's hundreds of thousands of square miles of literally nothing, and you can go for miles between villages without any form of available communication or respite. Our state is naturally a prime area for scientific experiments and the like, and that mostly involves going out to extremely remote areas with nothing but a satellite phone that could stop working at any moment. Not to mention the thousands of indigenous people who hope that someone doesn't decide to murder them because it can state troopers days to respond to calls in some areas. I'm willing to answer any questions that you have about the state and or how many bad bluegrass festivals are here. If I want to see a movie in a movie theater, I have to take a ferry or a float plane to the nearest town, get a hotel room, last ferry and plane leave before the afternoon matinee finishes, and then see the movie. In the summer, the cost of that ferry, if you take a car, is $188 round trip. Also, milk is $8 a gallon. I think if I'm feeling like living in the middle of nowhere I will just go to the upper peninsula of Michigan, Montana, or Maine and skip all those incredibly high expenses. Native rural Alaskan, Inupiaq, here, lived here, Kotzebue, all my life, 18 years. Sometimes people assume we're Neanderthals with no technology. When I go out of state some people don't believe me when I tell them I'm from Alaska. Like no, I don't own a dang polar bear, or live in an ice igloo. But you're dang right that I want to own a dang polar bear. Also, hearing snow machines at 3 in the morning isn't fun. Housing is hella expensive. Gallon of milk just about costs as much as a gallon of gas. $7. Only 2 ISPs here in town. One's crap in quality and service. The other is just crap in price and service. $300 a month for 6 Mbps internet a month. But all in all I love living here. Hunting's nice. Family and culture is great. And ironically, going as fast as the snow machine lets you out on the frozen ocean is fun. It's just home to me. My GF grew up all over Alaska. She drank a lot of powdered milk growing up, since regular milk was like 10x what it is in the lower 48. Lived in Nome for a while and flew often in small planes to get anywhere. I worked up there for about a year, and not seeing the sun for 30 days during the winter was pretty inconvenient. Oh god, frick powdered milk. Grew up poor. That crap is vile. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. There's always something outside that's big enough and close enough to eat or kill you, be it a summer grizzly or a winter moose. Unless you live in downtown Anchorage, and even sometimes that doesn't help, there's big wildlife everywhere. If you're looking to live on the cheap, it's not uncommon to rent a dry cabin. A small cabin, typically one large open room with some kind of loft, and no running water. You'll see a lot of college kids going that route, among others. The main disadvantage that comes to mind is outhouses. You're in Alaska. It's cold, it's dark, Now you have to shuffle through the snow however far to your probably uninsulated wood hut with a freezing cold toilet seat to greet you. Do your business. Cold toilet paper. Shuffle back to your cabin. Shower where you can. Public facilities like the gym, friend's house, something like that. Visited a cabin where the toilet seat was hung on a peg behind the wood stove. You bring your warm seat out to the crapper when you go. It gets boring. Like the first few months are like, oh another moose, but after a while you just want all moose to go for in a hole. But sometimes there's great things like when moose get drunk off of eating fermented berries off trees and walking the malls drunk. I can't make this stuff up. When I moved to Alaska, I just knew there would be lots of snow days when businesses and schools would close for the weather. Nope. In 3 winters the schools in Fairbanks closed one day, due to ice. My aunt lives up in Juneau, and I once asked her what would cause the schools to close. I lived in Texas at the time and they closed for like a smidge of ice. No joke. She then proceeded to tell me that even if the kids have to walk through like 6 featuring deep snow with limited visibility, the school still remains open. Honestly, you get a lot of weirdos. My parents moved up here after their divorces from their first marriages, and you meet a lot of people similarly looking for a fresh start. Living in Anchorage though is not that much different than life in the lower 48. I grew up there and lived in Fairbanks for 21 years. I'm also a quarter Yupik. 3 months of summer. Being Alaska native as an ethnicity doesn't just mean we grew up there. Never get to see real live TV, except the Super Bowl. Limited opportunities at work and with hobbies. Certain food is more expensive and sometimes unavailable. In Fairbanks I think there's 1 girl to every 4 guys, or something like that. Fairbanks, IDKFAK in general, is also known as a boomerang because everyone who tries to move to the lower 48 eventually come back. Staying the night at a friend's house, but they don't have an extra plug-in for your car, so you have to start it every 3 hours. Snow-packed roads. Kinda miss those actually. In elementary school you go outside for recess if it's above -30, -29 you're going outside. I expect that it must be pretty inconvenient to be followed around by Discovery Channel camera team the whole time. Is there anyone left in Alaska that doesn't have their own TV series? My husband is from small town Alaska. There's no mall or clothing stores in his town or neighboring towns. If people want to buy clothes they have to drive to Anchorage, which is 3 hours away. My husband didn't care, but as a girl I imagine this would suck. Also music came to his town like 2 years later than the real America. The real America. Shipping is super expensive. Produce is super expensive. Housing is super expensive. It's dark almost all the time in winter. Also, we are cut off from the lower 48, very isolating. This will probably get buried, but I'll give you my experiences that I have had here in Cold Bay, Alaska. First thing is that where I am we have a standing population of about 30-35 people. So, if you like the small town life then, I've got the place for you. Second, as others have said, is the cost of food. I am lucky in that a good amount of the shipping costs for food is reimbursed by the company I work for. Third, in Cold Bay there are no modern conveniences. There is a library, city hall, bar, hotel, post office, airport and school that has closed down. Fourth, the only way into or out of Cold Bay is plane or barge. Either way it is very costly. Fifth, medical care. Thankfully we do have a Coast Guard hangar, but emergency care is in Anchorage. Sixth, large predatory animals, mainly grizzly bears. I've seen a few prior to hibernation wandering around very close to where I work. Seventh, minimal access to TV. Internet and satellite TV are both on the expensive side. In-home internet is at best DSL speeds up here for well over $200 a month. Eighth, while some people have mentioned issues with shipping stuff up here, I haven't had issues with USPS or Amazon. Granted, it will take 1 week or more to get up here. Things will show up. Also, Amazon Prime is a godsend up here. No shipping on that weight machine and 60 inches LCD TV. I'll take it. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to respond. The mail takes forever going and coming. In the days before online banking, my credit card payments sent to the lower 48 were constantly late. It drove me crazy. You would think that they would take that into account and consider the post date of when you mailed it. That sucks. My perspective. I'm from Kansas and moved to Alaska about 3 years ago. I live in eastern Anchorage, right by the mountains. Anchorage is surrounded on 3 sides by water with mountains to the east and a road that leads to the rest of the state to the northeast. The food is mostly bad. There are only a handful of restaurants that we've really liked. For the most part it's not very flavorful. A lot of this is because food isn't fresh. The demographics are very different. Where I'm from, the largest minority group by far is Hispanic. Here it's either Alaska Native, not Native American. People will get offended annoyed by Native American or Pacific Islanders. Wildlife is a thing you have to be concerned about. I have to keep an eye out for moose when I'm walking my dog or even taking my trash out in the morning. I've only seen one bear in Anchorage by Russian Jack Park on Diamond. For the other Alaskans in the room, my friends on the outskirts of Eagle River, a slightly more rural suburb of Anchorage, have regularly had bears go through their trash and root around in their gardens. Snow mostly stays all winter. Once it falls, this is common to northerners, but where I'm from it snows, then melts, and snows again. Here it just keeps accumulating over the winter. People don't tend to stay in the area. Most people aren't from here, and so tend to move away semi-regularly as well. I've made several close friends since I've been here that have since left. Lack of jobs. You either fish or work at a supermarket. Places like FedEx don't have many people working there. It's weird. It was always a pain in the butt to get out. Where I live now, if you drive for 6 hours you will be somewhere completely different. Up there you would end up in Homer or Fairbanks or Tark. The winters weren't especially severe. I think Minnesota has more extreme weather than where I lived. They just went on so long. October through April, sometimes a foot of snow on the 31st of May. No green grass till June. What's up fellow Midwestern comrade? I live on the south shore of Lake Superior and I can relate to many of the things in this thread. Also, people don't realize that we get way more snow than Alaska, especially since my town is in the middle of the snow belt. My neighbor had a mirror when I lived there. It was one of those curvy ones. He would direct it towards my house and slowly melt the snow so it trickled down and froze on my door while I was at work. Ever have to chip your way into your own house with an axe? That son of a bee. That's brilliant. Lifelong Alaskan here. I'll add something even less people think about. I work in a tattoo shop and all the time I hear people say, well, back home X cost Y. Why is it so much more expensive? Now, most people would say because Alaska, and they'd be partly right, but mostly wrong. Certain things up here are more expensive because of the lack of labor pool and lack of a market flooded with crap. Saying it's just a tattoo piercing is like saying it's just a car. A Rolls Royce is not the same as a Kia. Granted, there are some Kia level artists charging Rolls Royce prices, but that's your own dang fault for not doing a little looking into who's doing your work. Certain things up here are more expensive because of the lack of labor pool and lack of a market flooded with crap. So basically because Alaska. Not really an inconvenience, but funny annoying nevertheless. My dad lived up in Alaska for a few years. When he drove back down to the 48 he still had his Alaska plates, and you would not believe the random strangers who would come up and ask about Alaska. We were driving along the Southern California border in the middle of summer and oh boy, do you guys have, like, roads up there, and but it's winter time right now up there, right? Because it's summer here. That's just who that I remembered best. We got waved through all the border patrol checks without even a second glance though, so that was quite nice. You guys in the lower 48 have no idea how lucky you are to have such clean cars all the time. 99% of the cars up here are half dirt colored and half whatever the actual color of the car is. Whenever I go to another state it's like everyone just got out of the car wash. You'll need to sign up with US Global Mail Forwarding Service. You get an address in Houston and they forward anything you can order to anywhere in the world by whatever method you choose. The craziest thing that I discovered about Alaska, after growing up in Anchorage and never thinking about it, is that in most communities, there is no way to get anything to you that doesn't fit in a Cessna or Twin Otter for 10 months of the year. This means that if you are the mayor of a small town off the road system and you need some more diesel to keep the town's generators running, you need to order it, wait for the river you live on to thaw in May, get the fuel shipped to some tiny town, like Dillingham, from Seattle or Anchorage, send a second ship that is capable of both ocean travel and river travel from Dillingham up to your village, unload it somehow, and get the ship the heck out of there before winter. On this boat you will no doubt find the 15 pieces of heavy construction equipment needed to build the 2 houses that are being built in your town this year. They will be built in a jiffy that summer while the ground is not frozen, but then it will be too late to get them out of town on another boat before winter, so you'll pay to rent them for a year. I'm not Alaskan, but my best friend's wife is. When her family goes to use the outhouse, they have to yell the entire time so that they don't startle any bears. It usually is something along the lines of, "Hello bears, I'm a human, over here," yelling so I don't surprise you. Just walking to the bathroom, now I'm on the toilet, going potty, okay, walking back to the house, goodbye bears. Getting pee is very inconvenient. I'm a 9/10 in Tahoe where women and men are 50-50. I'm a 4/10 at best in Prudhoe where women and men are 5-95. It bothers me that you didn't reduce those fractions. You get more energy in the summertime, like your body was starved for sunlight all winter, but you were unaware until the sun comes back in the spring. I can't go to the grocery store without bumping into and speaking with 10 of my neighbors. Small town. Everyone knows literally everyone. Having to answer questions about Sarah Palin, polar bears, igloos, and the free money when visiting the rest of the country. Honestly the first one and the most inconvenient. My default, we are very thankful that she now lives in Arizona. The price of perishables and cigs. I always brought a carton with me when I had travel up there because a single pack was over $7 in 2006. The cost of a gallon of milk was also really surprising. Something like $12 in Fairbanks. Mosquitoes. When it starts to get warm again, breakup happens. When all the ice starts to melt, and mosquitoes come out like you've never seen them. They are literally everywhere you go and will eat you alive and could literally carry away a small child. Also, wildfires frick our crap up. It's recommended you only go outside for 30 minutes if there is a fire nearby, due to the air quality being so poor. I think the majority of people will never feel they are doing what they love for a living. The human mind has a thing for pursuit, for instability, that makes it, in my opinion, always look for something else. The grass is always greener on the other side. So even if they are at their optimum place in life, where they marry skills to interests to motivators, they want to feel they are in the sweet spot, for the easiest reasons they can find around. What I call road divots caused by people having their studded tires on when there isn't any snow on the road. This gets dangerous when things get slick, as your car will pull into those divots, sometimes, quite forcefully, and can cause you to slide. This gets to be extra fun when you realize there are literally no lane lines for large stretches of road or highway, so any attempts to correct yourself have to be made in line with either the tail lights in front of you or the lights at the next stoplight. Of course, this could just be new to me because I hail from the greater Seattle area where nobody wears snow tires ever, and road conditions don't kill lane lines. I live in a moderately sized bush village and we need everything either flown out or sent out by barge. Oh, and I have the good fortune to also live in the one area in Alaska that has the most chance of a TB outbreak. We actually had a few people catch it last month and now they get to take medicine for up to a year. I'm a lifetime Alaskan. Something lower 48ers don't get is how goddamn big the state is. If you wanna drive from Fairbanks to Anchorage it's gonna take 8 hours. And that's just counting traffic in Wasilla and cross-jaw road construction. Or running into a line of tourists in Mott or 9 Mez that's going 20 miles an hour because there's a goddamn moose on the side of the road. That means you basically devote a whole day to driving. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.